I need a mother for my girls, and you need shelter, the weathered cowboy declared to the rain-soaked woman huddled beneath the general store's sagging roof, thunder rolling across the Wyoming wilderness like a warning. The townsfolk whispered their poison, calling the educated black woman a fallen creature, a scandal fleeing Denver's shadows. They expected her to wither and disappear, another broken soul claimed by the unforgiving frontier. But the widowed rancher saw something different in her dignified posture, something his two motherless daughters desperately needed. His blunt proposal offered salvation wrapped in practicality, her nurturing care for his children in exchange for protection from a world determined to destroy her. Yet beneath their arrangement of necessity lurked dangerous secrets. Hers could expose corruption that powerful men would kill to keep buried, while his comfortable lies about his beloved late wife might shatter under scrutiny. Would their marriage of convenience become their mutual salvation? Or would the truth they're both hiding destroy the fragile family they're trying to build? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The storm struck Cedar Ridge without mercy. Rain hammered the wooden planks of the general store porch where Evelyn Calloway sat clutching her worn leather satchel. Water dripped from the brim of her hat onto her muddy traveling dress. 3 days she had been waiting, 3 days of whispered conversations and turned backs. The store owner emerged and shook his head. No room at the boarding house. Again. Mrs. Patterson wouldn't take in someone with her reputation. Word from Denver traveled fast in small towns, and the stories grew uglier with each telling. Gambling houses, scandal, a woman of loose morals fleeing justice. Evelyn pulled her shawl tighter. None of it was true, but truth mattered little when survival hung by a thread. Her coin purse held barely enough for another day's meals. The stage back to Denver wouldn't return for 2 weeks, and she couldn't go back anyway. Not with Silas Brown still hunting for her. Thunder rolled across the plains as a wagon approached through the mud. The driver was a tall man with weathered hands and tired eyes. 2 small girls huddled beside him under a tattered blanket. The older one, maybe 8 months since her mother died. The store owner's voice carried clearly. He spoke about the stranger woman on his porch, the one with the fancy education and the Denver scandal. Evelyn's cheeks burned with shame, but she didn't move. Where could she go? When the McKinley family emerged, Clara glared at Evelyn with open hostility. Belle's cough rattled worse in the damp air. Abe McKinley paused and studied Evelyn's face. She met his gaze without flinching. He approached slowly. His voice was rough from disuse. "You're the woman from Denver." "Yes." "Got nowhere to go?" It wasn't a question. Evelyn nodded once. Abe glanced back at his daughters, then pulled a crumpled paper from his coat pocket. "Need someone who can make sense of this." Evelyn unfolded the document. A medical bill from Dr. Garrett. Belle's lung treatment. Past due. The careful way Abe watched her face told her everything. He couldn't read it himself. "Your daughter needs continuing care," Evelyn said softly. "The doctor recommends daily treatments and proper nutrition." Abe's jaw tightened. Figured it was something like that. Clara tugged on her father's sleeve. "Papa, we should go home." Belle coughed again, a sound that seemed to come from deep in her small chest. Abe's weathered face showed the strain of months carrying burdens too heavy for one man. "I need a mother for my girls," he said suddenly. "You need shelter. It's a practical arrangement, nothing more expected." The words hung between them like a bridge over dangerous water. Evelyn's heart pounded. Marriage to a stranger. Life on an isolated ranch. But the alternative was slow starvation, or worse. What would my duties be? Care for Clara and Belle. Keep house. Help with correspondence. He gestured toward the medical bill still in her hands. Things that require reading. Clara's eyes flashed with anger. We don't need her, Papa. Belle's getting sicker, Abe said quietly. You're falling behind in schooling. I can't do everything alone. Evelyn looked at the two girls. Clara's protective stance around her little sister. Sarah's things, Abe said from the doorway. Haven't had time to sort through them. Evelyn understood. Sometimes grief was easier to carry when surrounded by familiar objects. She noticed a wooden box tucked behind the sewing basket, but didn't investigate. That evening, Belle's cough worsened. Evelyn felt the child's forehead and found it burning with fever. Dr. Garrett had recommended steam treatments and willow bark tea. Working by lamplight, she prepared the remedies her teacher training had taught her. Clara watched suspiciously as Evelyn tended to Belle through the night. Trust would take time to earn. But as Belle's breathing gradually eased and her fever broke near dawn, something shifted in Clara's hostile stare. Survival demanded adaptation. For all of them. 2 weeks into their arrangement, Abe decided the family needed supplies from town. Evelyn dressed carefully in her best remaining dress, knowing appearances mattered. Clara walked between her father and Evelyn, while Belle held Evelyn's hand with growing trust. Cedar Ridge's Main Street buzzed with Saturday morning activity. Conversation stopped as the McKinley family approached. Women pulled their children closer. Men tipped their hats to Abe, but ignored Evelyn completely. At the general store, Mrs. Patterson spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. Shame what some folks will do for convenience. Those poor children deserve better. Clara's face flushed red. Belle pressed closer to Evelyn's side. Abe's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The schoolhouse visit proved worse. Mrs. Henderson crossed her arms when Abe requested Clara's return to classes. I cannot have that woman's influence on my students. The school board would never approve. Clara's education hung in the balance because of Evelyn's presence. The weight of that responsibility settled heavily on Evelyn's shoulders. Dr. Garrett's office provided the only welcoming face. He examined Belle thoroughly and nodded approvingly at Evelyn. Her breathing has improved remarkably. You clearly know proper care techniques. I learned from Dr. Morrison in Denver. He treated children at the Friedman School. Dr. Garrett raised his eyebrows with new respect. Morrison trained you well. Few people understand respiratory treatments like this. On the ride home, Clara finally spoke. Brought ranch correspondence. Abe would hand Evelyn letters and documents with careful casualness, as if asking for help was natural. She read aloud about cattle prices, feed costs, and payment schedules. His memory for numbers impressed her. He tracked every detail perfectly once he heard the information. One evening, Evelyn found Clara crying over a slate covered with crooked letters. I've forgotten everything from school. Mrs. Henderson won't take me back anyway. Evelyn sat beside her. Learning doesn't stop because of closed doors. We can continue here. She pulled out Sarah's old books and began Clara's lessons that very night. Reading, arithmetic, geography. Clara's hunger for knowledge matched her sister's. Both girls possessed keen intelligence that had been neglected too long. Abe watched these evening lessons from his chair by the fire. Sometimes Evelyn caught him listening intently as she explained grammar rules or described distant countries from the atlas. His own sharp mind absorbed the information, though he never asked direct questions. 3 weeks after the town visit, Belle suffered another respiratory attack. Her breathing became labored and her fever spiked dangerously. Dr. Garrett lived too far away to summon quickly. Evelyn fell back on everything Dr. Morrison had taught her. Steam tents to open Belle's airways, willow bark tea for fever, cool compresses and constant monitoring. She worked through the night while Abe and Clara hovered anxiously nearby. By dawn, Belle's fever broke. Her breathing steadied into normal rhythm. She opened her eyes and smiled weakly at Evelyn. "Mama Evelyn, I feel better." The word mama hung in the air like a blessing. Clara's expression softened completely for the first time since Evelyn's arrival. Later that morning, a stranger rode up to the ranch, well-dressed in a city suit, riding an expensive horse. Evelyn's blood turned cold when she recognized him through the kitchen window. Silas Brown had found her. He dismounted casually and approached the house with confident steps. Abe emerged from the barn and greeted the visitor politely. Evelyn couldn't hear their conversation, but she saw Silas gesture toward the house. Toward her. When Silas rode away 20 minutes later, his smile looked predatory. Sarah's true feelings toward her family and frontier life. Evelyn closed the box quickly. Some truths were too painful to face alone. But she suspected those letters might become important someday. Silas Brown's arrival changed everything. Her past was catching up, despite her best efforts to build a new life. The sanctuary she had found with the McKinley family was about to be tested. Silas wouldn't give up easily. He had too much at stake to let her testimony from Denver remain buried. War was coming to Cedar Ridge, whether she wanted it or not. Silas Brown made himself comfortable in Cedar Ridge. He took a room at the boarding house Mrs. Patterson had refused Evelyn. Within days, his charm worked its poison through the town like smoke through dry timber. He spoke softly to the right people, mentioned Denver gambling houses, suggested connections to unsavory establishments. The stories grew more elaborate with each telling. Evelyn watched from the general store as women clustered around Silas on the boardwalk. Their faces showed hungry satisfaction at having their suspicions confirmed. A well-dressed gentleman from the city carried more weight than any defense she might offer. Mrs. Patterson's voice carried clearly across the street. "I knew that woman brought trouble. Poor Mr. McKinley doesn't know what he's gotten himself into." The next Sunday, fewer families nodded to Abe after church services. Conversations died when the McKinleys approached. Clara noticed the change immediately and pressed closer to Evelyn's side. "Why are they acting different, Papa?" Abe's face remained stone. "People talk. Doesn't matter what they say." But it did matter. Belle's innocent questions about why other children wouldn't play with her cut deep. Clara's fierce loyalty couldn't shield them from growing isolation. Silas visited the ranch again 3 days later. This time he stayed longer, accepting Abe's offer of coffee with calculated friendliness. Evelyn remained in the kitchen, but she could hear fragments through the thin walls. "Concerned for your family's welfare," Silas spoke with practiced sincerity. "The woman you've taken in has a darker past than you might realize. She's been nothing but good to my girls. Sometimes appearances deceive. In Denver, the frontier life suffocated her. She felt trapped by motherhood and marriage. The final letters spoke of plans to leave Cedar Ridge forever, to abandon Abe and the children for a new life back east. Evelyn's hands trembled as she read. The perfect wife Abe mourned had been planning betrayal before her accidental death. These letters would shatter his idealized memories, but they also revealed why this house felt frozen in grief. Sarah had been as lost as Evelyn once was. Dr. Garrett arrived unexpectedly the next morning, while Abe worked in the distant pastures. His expression was grim as he dismounted. "That man Silas Brown has been asking questions about you in town. Specific questions about Denver and your reasons for leaving." Evelyn's stomach clenched. "What kind of questions?" "About your testimony against certain officials, about stolen funds from schools. Mrs. Calloway, I think you should know that I've sent telegrams to colleagues in Denver." Hope flickered in Evelyn's chest. "What did you learn?" "Your reputation there is spotless among honest people. Dr. Morrison speaks of you as one of his finest assistants. The school superintendent calls you a hero for exposing corruption. The truth felt like sunlight after weeks of shadow. Then why is Silas here? Because your testimony helped convict some very powerful men. Men with friends who don't forgive or forget. Fear replaced hope instantly. Evelyn sank into a chair. He's not here to ruin my reputation. He's here to silence me permanently. I believe so. We need to tell the town the truth before he can do more damage. But Silas had already done his work too well. When Dr. Garrett tried to speak on Evelyn's behalf, people dismissed his words as misguided kindness. The exotic stranger's stories carried more weight than facts. The crisis came to a head when Belle innocently mentioned to Mrs. Patterson how much she loved her new mama's bedtime stories. The child's genuine happiness became ammunition against Evelyn. That woman has bewitched those poor children, Mrs. Patterson declared loudly. Someone should contact the territorial authorities about their welfare. Clara overheard and ran home in tears. They want to take us away from you, Mama Evelyn. The word mama from Clara's lip. People wanted me silenced. Abe studied her face in the lamplight. Silas Brown, one of them. He's not here to expose my past. He's here to make sure I can't testify again if those cases are reopened. The truth hung between them like a blade. Everything depended on whether Abe believed her word against a well-dressed stranger's charm. Outside, storm clouds gathered again over Cedar Ridge. This time, the coming tempest would determine whether the McKinley family survived intact, or whether fear and lies would tear apart the love they had carefully built. The town meeting was scheduled for Saturday evening. Word spread quickly that the community would discuss the McKinley family situation. Silas Brown had pushed for the gathering, claiming concern for the children's welfare. Evelyn spent Friday night reading Sarah's letters again. The painful truth about Abe's late wife felt like holding fire. These revelations could destroy his cherished memories, or free him from impossible expectations. She tucked the letters into her dress pocket before dawn. Abe barely spoke during breakfast. Clara and Belle sensed the tension and ate in unusual silence. The weight of uncertainty pressed down on the small kitchen like storm clouds. "Papa, are we in trouble?" Belle asked finally. "Everything will work out," Abe replied, but his voice lacked conviction. At noon, Dr. Garrett arrived with urgent news. His face showed grim satisfaction as he dismounted quickly. "The Denver authorities responded to my telegrams. Silas Brown is wanted for questioning in 3 separate corruption cases." Evelyn's heart hammered. "Are you certain?" "Completely. He fled Denver 2 weeks before scheduled testimony, the same testimony that would have implicated him directly in stealing school funds." Abe stepped forward. "So everything Evelyn told us is true?" "More than true. She's considered a key witness in the largest education fraud case in territorial history. Her courage exposed a network that stole thousands of dollars meant for children's schooling. The pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. Silas hadn't come to Cedar Ridge to ruin Evelyn's reputation. He had come to eliminate the witness who could destroy him completely. "We have to tell the town tonight." Denver's criminal element that endanger this entire community. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Patterson nodded vigorously. She associated with gamblers, confidence men, and worse. Her presence threatens the moral foundation we've built in Cedar Ridge. The lies flowed like honey over poison. Silas painted Evelyn as a corrupting influence who had somehow bewitched a good man and his innocent children. When he finished, the room buzzed with angry whispers. Several men looked toward Abe with expressions mixing pity and condemnation. Dr. Garrett stood slowly. "Might I respond to these accusations?" "Of course," replied Mayor Harrison, "though I'm not sure what medical opinion adds to moral concerns. I've received official correspondence from Denver authorities. Mr. Brown's characterizations are not merely wrong, they are deliberately false. Silas's confident expression flickered slightly. Dr. Garrett pulled out telegraph messages. Mrs. Calloway was indeed involved with Denver's criminal element. She was the primary witness who exposed their crimes and testified against them in court. Shocked silence replaced angry murmurs. She taught at a school for freed children. When she discovered officials stealing educational funds, she risked her life to report them. Her testimony led to multiple convictions and recovered thousands of stolen dollars. Mrs. Patterson's face went pale. Several other women exchanged uncomfortable glances. Furthermore, Dr. Garrett continued, Mr. Silas Brown is wanted for questioning in connection with those same crimes. He fled Denver to avoid testifying about his own involvement in the theft. The room erupted. Voices raised in confusion and anger, but now the anger was directed at Silas instead of Evelyn. Silas jumped to his feet. "This is preposterous. I came here out of concern for this community." "You came here to silence a witness," Dr. Garrett replied firmly. Before anyone could react, Abe McKinley rose from the back of the room. His weathered face showed determination mixed with shame. "I have something to say." The crowd quieted, respecting the widowed rancher despite their recent doubts about his judgment. 3 months ago, my daughters were dying slowly. Belle couldn't breathe properly. Clara was falling behind in her schooling because I couldn't read well every night. She makes us feel safe. She's our mama now, and anyone who tries to take her away from us is wrong. The simple declaration from an 8-year-old girl carried more power than all of Silas's smooth speeches. Belle rose too, her small hand finding Evelyn's. "Mama Evelyn made me better when I couldn't breathe. She's good." The truth hung in the air like morning sunlight burning away fog. A woman who had risked everything to protect children in Denver had found a new family to protect in Cedar Ridge. Silas Brown saw his carefully constructed lies crumbling. His face darkened with rage as he realized his mission had failed completely. The real battle was just beginning. Silas Brown's face twisted with fury as the town meeting turned against him. He stood abruptly, his polished facade cracking completely. "You're all fools if you believe her lies over mine." Mayor Harrison stepped forward. "Mr. Brown, perhaps you should explain why Denver authorities are seeking you." "Misunderstandings. Paperwork errors." Silas's voice lost its smooth confidence. "I came here as a concerned citizen." "You came here as a fugitive," Dr. Garrett corrected firmly. "The territorial marshal has been notified of your location." Panic flashed across Silas's features. He pushed through the crowd toward the door, his expensive suit no longer impressive but somehow desperate. The room buzzed with shocked conversations as the truth settled over Cedar Ridge like sunrise. Mrs. Patterson sat frozen in her front row seat. Her moral certainty had crumbled in minutes, leaving her exposed as a gossip who had nearly destroyed an innocent family. Mayor Harrison called for order. "It appears we owe the McKinley family an apology. Mrs. Calloway's character has been thoroughly vindicated." The crowd murmured agreement, but Evelyn felt no satisfaction. Too much damage had been done. Too many wounds had been opened for simple apologies to heal. That night at home, Clara and Belle went to bed early, exhausted by the evening's revelations. Abe sat by the fire while Evelyn cleared the dinner dishes. The silence between them carried weight. Finally, Abe spoke. "There's something I need to tell you about Sarah Payne. I built my whole morning around a woman who didn't exist." His voice cracked slightly. "The perfect wife who loved this life and these children completely." Evelyn pulled the letters from her pocket. "What do you want to do with these?" Abe took them with trembling hands. "I should burn them," Forget what they say. Or we could bury them with the truth. Accept that Sarah was human, not perfect. Love her anyway. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. 3 families from town arrived at the ranch with offers of help and friendship. Mrs. Henderson came too, carrying school books for Clara. "I was wrong about you," she told Evelyn directly. "Clara's education has clearly flourished under your guidance. I'd like her to return to school, but perhaps you could also tutor some of our struggling students." The request felt like vindication and opportunity combined. Teaching again meant using the skills that had defined her in Denver. Dr. Garrett arrived at noon with official news. The territorial marshal arrested Silas Brown at the boarding house this morning. He'll be transported back to Denver for trial. Relief flooded through Evelyn. The threat that had hung over her for months was finally gone. "There's more," Dr. Garrett continued. "The Denver school superintendent wants to offer you a position, head teacher at the new Territorial Education Center. The offer should have been everything Evelyn wanted: respect, security, purpose. But looking at Clara and Belle playing in the yard, she felt only sadness at the thought of leaving. "I need time to consider." That afternoon, she and Abe walked to Sarah's grave on the hill behind the house. The simple wooden cross marked a woman who had struggled with dreams and disappointments like everyone else. They buried the letters beside the grave, then planted wildflower seeds over the small hole. Not to hide the truth, but to let something beautiful grow from acknowledged pain. "Sarah deserved better than this lonely place," Abe said quietly. Maybe them could have imagined this moment. A practical arrangement born of desperation had grown into something neither practical nor desperate. It had become home. The wildflower seeds would bloom in spring, covering the buried pain with new beauty, just like the family that had grown around a simple proposal spoken in the rain. 6 months later, spring transformed Cedar Ridge into a canvas of green grass and blooming wildflowers. The seeds planted on Sarah's grave had grown into a cascade of purple and yellow blossoms that danced in the prairie wind. Evelyn stood in the McKinley kitchen, sunlight streaming through clean windows as she prepared breakfast. Clara sat at the table, reading aloud from a geography book, her voice confident and clear. Belle practiced writing letters on her slate, tongue poking out in concentration. "Mama Evelyn, I can spell Wyoming now," Belle announced proudly. "Show me." Belle carefully wrote each letter. Her handwriting had improved dramatically since winter, when she could barely hold a pencil properly. Abe entered from morning chores, his face weathered by sun and wind, but peaceful in a way that had been missing for years. He washed his hands at the basin and glanced over Belle's shoulder at her slate. "That's fine work, little one." He caught Evelyn's eye and smiled. 3 months ago, he had surprised her by writing his first complete sentence without help. Now he read simple passages aloud to the girls during evening story time. "Dr. Garrett's coming today," Clara announced. "He said he had news about the wedding preparations." The wedding. Their practical arrangement had evolved so naturally into love that formalizing it felt like celebrating what already existed. But the ceremony would mark their transformation from necessity to choice, from survival to belonging. Mrs. Henderson arrived at noon with school books and warm apple pie. The schoolmarm's attitude had changed completely after witnessing Clara and Belle's educational progress under Evelyn's guidance. "I've never seen children advance so quickly," she admitted. "Clara could test into advanced grades if she wanted." "She loves learning," Evelyn replied. "Both girls do. They love having a mother who had taught in Denver. The cause she had risked everything to protect would be remembered in stone and mortar." "And the wedding arrangements?" Abe asked. "Mayor Harrison will officiate. The churchwomen are preparing a celebration dinner. Half the territory seems to want to attend. The transformation from outcast to celebrated citizen still felt impossible some mornings. But the evidence surrounded her daily in small kindnesses and growing respect. That evening, as spring rain drummed gently on the roof, the family gathered around the kitchen table for their nightly ritual. Clara read from a novel while Belle worked a simple arithmetic problem. Abe practiced writing in a composition book, his letters growing steadier each day. Evelyn mended a tear in one of Belle's dresses, the domestic scene so normal it felt miraculous. 6 months ago, she had been homeless and hunted. Now she sat, surrounded by the quiet sounds of family life. "Mama Evelyn," Belle said suddenly, "tell us again about the wedding dress." The dress had been Sarah's, altered to fit Evelyn's figure. At first, wearing another woman's gown had felt wrong, but Abe had insisted it would honor Sarah's memory while celebrating their new beginning. "It's ivory silk with pearl buttons," Evelyn replied. "Clara will carry wildflowers from the gravesite." "And I get to throw flower petals," Belle added excitedly. The wedding was scheduled for the following Saturday. Dr. Garrett would stand as Abe's witness. Mrs. Henderson, in a gesture of friendship that still amazed Evelyn, had volunteered to help with Belle's hair ribbons. Friday morning brought unexpected visitors. A delegation from Denver arrived by stage, led by Dr. Morrison himself. Evelyn's former supervisor looked exactly as she remembered, kind eyes behind wire spectacles. "My dear girl, you've become quite famous," he said, embracing her warmly. "Your testimony helped convict 4 corrupt officials. Thousands of dollars have been recovered for children's education." The delegation included the school superintendent, 2 territorial judges, and a newspaper reporter. They had traveled from bright with possibility. Dr. Garrett appeared in the doorway. "It's time." The church doors opened, every face turned toward her with warmth and celebration. Abe stood at the altar in his best suit, Clara and Belle walking ahead of her scattering wildflower petals. As she joined him at the altar, Abe took her hands gently. "Still just a practical arrangement?" he whispered. "The most practical decision I ever made." Outside, spring continued its gentle work of renewal. The wildflowers on Sarah's grave danced in the breeze, blessing the new family that had grown from necessity into love, from survival into belonging.